Hello, grade 10 applied science. This is the first of the science videos that I'm going to make for you guys. I basically make the videos to go along with the unit guide that you get. So if you need anything explained in terms of what the expectations are for the guide or how to do something in the guide, it's there. Now, the videos aren't going to be a full explanation. I'm not going to teach the entire guide to you because I don't think that's an efficient use of time. We'll be doing those in the seminars in the classroom. But I did just want to shoot you a quick little introduction video just to show you what was in the guide, how to get through the guide, and how to use all the different pieces within it, as well as to use some of the resources that I put up here for you guys. So first of all, your guide is located right here. You can open that up, and it's basically just a scanned copy of one of your unit guides. I've included a large periodic table in here for you guys. If you want one that's separate, hard copy, I've got those in here. But this is very clear to read. It's very neat. It's got an explanation of how each element is labeled in the table. It's a very good tool to use. Okay. Second thing that I've put up here for you guys is I put up your test review. As you'll notice in the guide, there aren't any assessments. There's nothing you're going to be marked on in terms of your practice work within the guide. You basically need to learn the information in the guide, and then to supplement that, I've used a review sheet that you can use that basically breaks down all the key components of the guide, and most importantly is the stuff that's on the test. If it is not in this review sheet, it is not on the test. Okay, so to be fair, if you learn everything that's in here, you understand how to do all of these different things, then you're going to be okay for the test. Okay? Alrighty, so when you get into the unit, it basically starts off with just a quick breakdown of what chemical reactions are. Easiest way to explain a chemical reaction is when two elements come together, they create a reaction. That reaction creates a product. And there are reactants involved that create the reaction, that create the product, which make it a chemical reaction. You need to dilute is one of the definitions that you need to be looking for. It goes into a quick breakdown of hazards in the home. So chemical reactions are obviously dangerous, which leads us into a little bit of a practical discussion around WHMIS, which you learned in Unit 1. You need to know what a material safety data sheet is. And then it gets into the meat and potatoes of the unit. This is the table of elements. If I was going to break this unit in half, the first half of it would be all about the table of elements, the periodic table of elements, and how you use it. Okay, the periodic table of elements is simply that. It's a table that includes all of the elements. Elements are basically the products broken down to their simplest form. It's everything on the planet is made up of these basic elements, and these elements come together. They make compounds. Which make different substances. But basically, if you broke everything down to its rawest form, to what it is as an atom, it would be these basic elements. Okay? I'm not going to explain the entire table to you. All I can say is this. The elements are arranged with a purpose. The elements just aren't basically listed by number 1 through 103 just for any random reason. They're they are organized with a purpose. Those elements that are grouped together in the same group or column, so each column in the table is called a group, have similar properties. Those that are grouped together in the same row or period, they're called periods, have similar properties. So all of these elements are in the same period, they have similar properties. All of these elements are in the same group or column, and they have the same properties. And underneath here explains what all of those different things are. So I'm sorry that it got broken up by the table that I inserted for you, but this is the beginning of the definition. So again, periods are the rows, families are the columns, and this is an explanation of what the periods mean. This is an explanation of what the columns mean, the groups or the families. Okay, and then explains metals. Everything to the left side of the chart is metals. You have this little zigzag staircase, and then you have non-metals. Okay, so metals are over here, zigzag staircase, non-metals to the right. Okay, but this explains what all the different things on the periodic table are and how they're organized. So that's the first half of the unit. The second half of the unit is breaking down chemical formulas. As we said, each element is an atom. So when we count a compound, In this compound, this is H2O. We all know that that's water. H2O, the basic two elements in water are hydrogen and oxygen. So that compound is basically a compound of two different elements. This little number tells you that there are two hydrogen atoms for every oxygen atom in a compound in the compound that is water. So every water element has two hydrogen atoms in it and one oxygen atom. And what chemical formulas do is it starts with teaching you how to count atoms. So in this case right here for counting atoms, we put H on its own equal 2, O on its own equaled 1. If it doesn't have a number next to it, that's just 1. Okay? And it gets more complicated. You start getting more and more complex compounds, and so I'm going to teach you guys how to count the atoms within those compounds. Once we have the compounds, we will see how compounds come together to make chemical formulas. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys not only how to name a formula from its written, so this is its written chemical formula, and this is its name. So we are going to learn in this unit how to go from a chemical formula to a name, and we're also going to learn how to go from a name to a chemical formula. There are different types of chemical compounds. There are ionic chemical compounds, and there are molecular chemical compounds. So we are going to go through that in this unit, and I'm going to teach you the difference between the two, and I'm also going to teach you how to write the chemical formula for those. Okay, this is very key in terms of understanding how metals react with other elements and how non-metals react with other elements. In layman's terms, metals like to lose electrons, non-metals like to gain electrons, and you will tie that back into the periodic table. I will explain that in our first seminar. I'll teach you how these guys like to lose electrons, how these guys like to gain electrons, and how the chart organizes them based on that losing or gaining of electrons. Okay? So obviously their losing or gaining of electrons dictates how reactive they are. Because metals like to lose electrons, they're more reactive the least amount of electrons they have in their outer shell. Because non-metals like to gain electrons, they're more reactive the more electrons they have in their outer shell. And I'll explain why in our seminars. Okay, so you'll learn the difference between ionic and molecular compounds, and then you will learn how to write formulas from the chemical formula. So if you have the name, you'll be able to write the chemical formula for that. So, and if you have the chemical formula, you'll be able to work backwards and write the name. Okay, but that's basically the entire unit. Part 1 of the unit is learning the periodic table, how elements are labeled in that table and what properties they have. And then part 2 of the unit is learning how to distinguish between compounds, how to name compounds and write chemical formulas for compounds. Okay? And this explains how to do it. So you need to be able to go in each direction. You need to be able to go from the name to the chemical formula, and you also need to be able to go from the chemical formula back to the name for both ionic and molecular compounds. And if you look at your review sheet, basically everything that I've just talked about is in there. The only thing that is not in the guide is this Bohr diagram, and this is a review from Unit 9. These are equations for how you can come up using the labels from the cell in the periodic table. This shows you how to come up with the number of electrons, the number of protons, and the atomic mass from those cells. And then once you have these numbers, it will teach you how to label a Bohr diagram for each element. And instead of putting it in the unit guide, I found a great video for you guys. It's right here. And this guy does a really good job showing you how to take one element out of the table of contents and how to write its Bohr diagram for that element. Okay, I know that was a lot of information. Again, if you want a breakdown of what's important, what you need to know out of that unit, use your test review and come to the seminars. I'll have you ready for that test. Let me know if you have any questions.